Hello guys, and welcome to my video about the changes to the warrior in 8.1. My name is Squiggle, and today I'm going to talk you guys through what has changed and what is going to be the top dog for next tier. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that I'm officially a warrior main now, and since my old guild died, I have been playing this warrior for about a month or so. In this video, I'm going to be talking about arms, fury, and protection, and I'm going to show the new Azerite that has come in for these specs and what this is going to mean on the DPS meters. This is also going to be followed up by some sims and some actual things from Warcraft logs showing you how these actually square against each other in certain scenarios. So without further ado, here is my warrior guide and enjoy. So now we're going to have a look at what has happened to the warrior and what changes have been made. So it's pretty clear what Blizzard wants to do with these warrior changes. They're trying to buff up the protection warrior to the point where it is not a meme for everything apart from AoE damage. On top of this, they are aiming to move a lot of strength away from the warrior arms execute and put a little bit more strength towards the fury specialization. Now what this is going to do is this is going to try and make fury simulate better than arms, because arms was simply so good for last tier. Vectis and Gahun were just completely king arms fights, to say the least. So for our class changes, what we're going to see is that charge is no longer subject to the global cooldown. This is fantastic because GCD is just such a problem with a lot of the warrior spells right now and how they interact with each other. For example, for Fury, you used to have to use your recklessness before the pull, charge in, and then Siege Breaker as the start of every single combo, 3 GCDs, now down to 2, which is like, it just makes the whole world of difference and it is so much cooler. Execute now refunds 20% of rage spent if the target doesn't die, down from 30%, again trying to move a little bit of strength away from the arms execute and therefore nerf the massacre talent, which increases the amount of health that they need to actually activate your execute. Fury does not actually get a direct buff. However, it is going to get a few indirect buffs through this, which is going to make the simulation DPS just completely crush the arms warrior, but we'll get to that later. Next up, these are the huge changes that are going to happen. Ignore Pain is no longer subject to the global cooldown. This is a great way to get rid of your rage, and it means that you can be much tankier while gaining your rage and spending it at the same time. Intercept no longer subject to the global cooldown, fantastic, just the same as the others, really like this change. Shield block recharge time down to 16 seconds from 18, and we are also going to get a stamina and a strength buff. Now this is fantastic, I really like where they are going in this direction. They are both making the active mitigation more readily available to use, and they are also increasing our armor, which is going to pretty much help us out in situations where we don't have shield block or even ignore pain. So this could even see protection being one of the better raid tanks coming in the next tier, especially because the other classes like DK and Monk are getting slight nerfs. On top of this, what I wanted to add is that protection might actually be very good for Mythic Plus as well. It is by far the highest damage in AoE situations from all tanks, so there might be certain affixes and certain keys where you could prefer the protection warrior over other classes. Granted, you would need to pair it with a very strong tank healer such as a druid or a monk in order to stay alive in situations where you would need extra healing. So now onto our Azerite traits. So Bastion of Might is going to be a new trait that replaces reinforced plating, and this means that your avatar increases your mastery by 106 for 20, and this means that your avatar is going to increase your mastery by 106 for 20 seconds, on top of instantly granting you ignore pain. Now this is pretty good because the prot warrior does take a little bit of ramp up at the start of a fight. So since you're using your avatar right off the bat, this will help you in order to start off the fight with a good amount of rage, a good amount of ignore pain, get your shield blocks and your ignore pain stacks hitting up nice and easy. Next up, we're going to see Cold Steel, Hot Blood. This is going to replace Blood Craze, and this is actually going to be a very good talent. And as of now, it is currently simming as our third best trait. However, it might even get better if we go towards a crit build, but only time will tell. Now what this is going to do is Bloodthirst critical strikes are going to give us extra rage, and it's going to put a leeching effect on the enemy. Now you can't really put the leeching effect into sims, however this could be very good on fights with a lot of dot damage, and this is only going to make our burst window inside recklessness a lot better. So expect this to be a really good trait coming into the future. Next up, Crushing Slam Assault. Damage is increased. Now this is for arms, and this just means that our slams are going to be doing more damage. I believe this is actually topping for the arms warrior, so it could put us more into a slam oriented build coming into the next tier. Next up, Gathering Storm has been redesigned. Now while blade storming, you gain movement speed and strength stacking. So this is essentially like the helmet from last expansion, which was actually our best piece in TOS. So this could honestly be a very good talent, especially when it comes to... Next up, we're going to have a new trait. This is going to be called Intimidating Presence. Intimidating Shout reduces the movement speed of affected enemies by 50% and prevents the next 8,109 damage they deal after Intimidating Shout ends. So this is actually not a great trait. It is quite counterintuitive for what we are doing on the Protection Warrior. There is actually a build that you run where your Intimidating Shout duration is going to be very long, along with the Avatar Thunderclap build that you can run. So all in all, I think this is a very... So next up, we are having Strike the Anvil. Now this is going to replace Executioner's Precision, which is what was making Arms Warrior so good in farm and these execute situations. The Tactician effects improve your next overpower, causing it to deal an additional 902 damage and reduce the remaining cooldown of Mortal Strike. Right now this isn't seeming too well, however I do expect to see buffs in the next couple of months. However, the most important thing to take away from this is it is not improving our execute window at all. So this will take a lot of strength away from what arms gives best. Last but not least, we're going to have a look at Unbridled Ferocity, which is going to replace our Trample the Weak. Now what this means is that Rampage deals additional damage and has an 8% chance to grant you Recklessness. Now right now this is an absolute must have. This trait is absolutely fantastic. I will go on later as to which two traits that you want to be running on the Fury Warrior at all times, but both of these are going to increase your Rampage damage and give you both extra rage and extra recklessness. So all in all, expect either nerfs or very big things from Unbridled Ferocity, as it is looking absolutely ridiculous right now. So right now we're going to have a look at the sims for the Azerite traits for the Arms Warrior. Now as you guys can see, Test of Might is going to be our best trait if we are running a certain setup of talents, and Crushing Assault is going to be our second best or first best depending on what you are running. Now obviously you want to be running one of these Archive of the Titans pieces at all times if you are in Uldir. Now I'm going to also say that Striking the Anvil is looking okay right now. However, I would recommend that you run Test of Might when it comes to AoE situations, as well as builds such as Seismic Wave and Gathering Storm. It is also worth noting that Test of Might, Seismic Wave and Gathering Storm are all going to be very good for AoE situations. However, Crushing Assault and Striking the Anvil will only be good for 1 to 2 target situations at best. Another thing to remember when you are looking at the stacking of these traits is you want to make sure that you are not stacking too many Crushing Assault at the same time, simply because the proc only works on one ad. It is also worth mentioning that you only want to be running one Crushing Assault at a time, as the rage reduction cost only goes down once and no more thereafter. So I do recommend, if you are going for single target, you run one Crushing Assault along with a few Tests of Might and Striking the Anvil. The same thing happens when you're running Strike the Anvil, as the amount that your Mortal Strike gets reduced by does not stack with the extra traits. So single target, I recommend running either of these with an Archive of the Titan trait for raid, or for non-Uldir raid, you should go with Test of Might as your third choice. So next up, we're going to have a quick look at the top dog for this patch. This is going to be the Fury Warrior. Now we're going to start off with Unbridled Ferocity and Simmering Rage being our best traits. Now, like I did say before, these do not stack with themselves, but they do stack with each other. So at all times you want to be making sure you're running one Unbridled Ferocity and one Simmering Rage, and then your last trait should either be an Archive or a Cold Steel Hot Blood. Now, these are pretty much interchangeable for single target or AoE situations because our AoE is based a lot off AoE rampages with the cleave from our Whirlwind coming into play. Now we are going to have a brief look at what the simulations look like comparing the Fury Warrior to the Arms Warrior. Now we can currently see that the Arms Warrior is slightly behind the Fury Warrior by about 6 or 7 places and by about 1.25k DPS. Now this is quite a small gap, honestly, simply due to the nature of how these two classes run. Now if you are doing 2 target fights, the Arms Warrior is still probably going to win because of Sweeping Strikes and Blade Storm being so potent even after the changes. So next up, we're going to look at what we should be running on the Warrior for certain fights for DPS. Now these two fights are a great example of which of these two classes are going to do well in either situation. So we are going to see the Arms Warrior doing very good in burst AoE situations such as on Mother when they are doing a bit of a pad strategy. However, for more single target fights, we are going to see the Fury Warrior being victorious by a bit. So as said prior, we are seeing Talos being a very good Fury fight, and then Mother, we are seeing mostly a lot of Arms Warriors on here right at the top, and they seem to be getting a lot of value still out of their Warbreaker and their Blade Storm combo, just giving so much burst AoE potential. Next up, Fetid Devourer. This is a little bit of a mix here. I do think for pure boss damage, the Fury Warrior will be the best. However, if the ad is being stacked up next to the boss, you could probably get a little bit of Sweeping Strikes damage from it, and in these scenarios the Arms Warrior may just come ahead a bit. Next up, Zekphos. So this is quite even as well. However, the intervals for the Blade Storm combo is just too powerful for the Warrior. However, we can just see that the combo for the Blade Storm is just too strong for the Arms Warrior still. Now, these are quite competitive, and I would probably see the Fury Warrior doing a little bit more boss and priority ad damage. However, the Blade Storm is just going to kill every single Silithid Warrior in sight. Next up, no surprises here. Vectis is a clean 2 target fight. You know, if the fight goes a little bit haywire, there might even be 3 or 4 targets. However, this is going to be predictable for the Warrior. They know exactly when to be casting their cooldowns, their Sweeping Strikes and their Blade Storm, so this is still very much so an arms fight. Next up, Xul Reborn. Now this is actually quite interesting. I wasn't expecting the Fury Warrior to beat the Arms Warrior so much in this case. However, this fight isn't really easy to tell which is the better class, as boss damage is more important than AoE damage. Next up, we see Mithrax the Unraveler. Now, the burst AoE potential of the Arms Warrior is still there, as well as the 2 target cleave onto the big ad that comes out in Mythic. So, it is expected that Arms has a slight advantage to the Fury Warrior in this situation. Now, last but not least, we have G'huun. Arms Warrior is looking to be very potent on this fight as well. A lot of 2+ target cleave that you can pretty much time very well on the Warrior. So you can expect to see a lot more Arms Warriors in this fight, especially if you have the opportunity to cleave off a lot of ads. Now that just about wraps up my guide for the changes which are happening to the Warrior. Now if you have any of these classes that you have questions about, now remember, over the next couple of weeks and months I am expecting to put out guides for all of these specs and a lot more classes to come. And if you do have any questions in the meantime, feel free to message them in the comments down below or simply ask me when I am streaming. So until next time, thanks for watching and best of luck in the future on the Warrior.